Now, I got 15 words here, and I want you to look at these 15 words. And so everyone take a look at these 15 words. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I'm going to come back to this slide in a minute or two. So I'll give you 10 seconds to look at them. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, there are obviously other thinking skills. One of them is metacognition. What's that word mean? Means thinking about how you think. Okay? So what I'm going to have you do, and this time I do want you to participate. Okay? Everybody's going to say out loud with me. You're going to spell the word shop, S-H-O-P, out loud 5 times. Don't wimp out on me, because if you don't do this, you're not going to get the learning value of what I'm trying to get across, okay? So I want everybody to shout it out, okay? Ready? S-H-O-P, 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 S-H-O-P. What do you do when you come to green light? Most people go. Now, I didn't say this as a gotcha. What I'm saying to you is, why did you say stop? What was the thinking that came up with that answer? Did I lead you into it? Were you trying to answer so quickly that you didn't give it sufficient amount of thought? My point is, it's really important to think about how you think, how you make decisions. As you go through, I would stop every once in a while when you make a decision about something, I don't care how small it is. Think about what went into your decision-making process. The other example is, you can be decisive and be decisively wrong. Okay? One of the capacities that you have to be excellent at the senior level is to be able to absorb a tsunami amount of information, and it's becoming overwhelming, I recognize. And separating the wheat from the chaff nowadays is really difficult, with all the misinformation that's out there. But you have to be able to do that. And not only do you have to be able to absorb it, you must simplify it. Your job as a senior leader is to take the information and reduce it in terms that is understandable for the people that work for you or the people you're trying to persuade. It has to be simple for them. Now, you looked at 15 words. What I'm going to do is ask you to take a moment and think about which words you remember. Okay? Not out loud. Just think about 4 or 5 words that you remember out of the 15. You're not going to remember all 15. Okay? Give you a couple seconds to think about it. Try to remember what words you saw. Okay? All right, so let's go through a couple. How many of you remember the word bed? Can I see a show of hands? Wow. How many of you remember tired? Oh, probably about 30% of you. How many remember the word yawn? About 40%. How many of you remember the word sleep? Gosh, almost all of you. Folks, sleep's not one of the words. What am I trying to get across here? You actually, believe it or not, have a memory that you planted in your head of the word sleep. It's in your memory right now. The question is, why is it there? It's how your memory works. So your memory makes connections. When you get input, the memory tries to take all these different pieces of information and tries to try to make sense out of it. So your memory is not a videotape of what you saw. It is a recreation. So when you're reflecting back on what you did in the past, or you reflect on a decision you made a long time ago, you got to remember that all kinds of information that comes subsequent to that, and that memory is going to be recreated. That's why I always advise leaders that if you're going to make any kind of a major decision, to that as you're making the decision, write down what was the competing arguments, what was the context that you made the decision in, what was the decision, what was the assumptions that you made and the facts that you made. Because when you go back to reflect on that, you're going to have outcome bias impact that all along, whereas if you have that information up front, it allows you to go back and say, okay, this is what we knew at that time. Okay? So self-awareness is really key. You need to have the self-awareness how your memory works. You have to have self-awareness of how bias can influence what you think and what you see and what you do. And they're inherent throughout the entire process. For example, if you decide, I want to go to McDonald's, that's a bias. You bias towards McDonald's instead of going to Burger King or going to Wendy's or something, or Chick-fil-A. It influences your decision making, and sometimes it can get you in trouble. Outcome bias. For example, one leader here, this leader makes some really, dangerous types of decisions, but due to circumstances beyond his or her control, it turned out to be a huge success. And everybody says, wow, how did this leader have the foresight to figure out that that's what's going to happen? Then you have another leader, and this leader is getting all the data, and he's going through the process of thinking strategically and so forth, and his decision doesn't go right because of something in the external environment doesn't go right, or some of the facts that he got was incorrect. The latter one is going to be viewed, oh, he's not a very good leader. The other one's going to be viewed as phenomenal. Yet, if you really analyze what that leader did, he put the organization at risk and it could have destroyed it. It was dangerous. He was lucky. Take an NFL quarterback. How many times you see, well, Tom Brady did this, and therefore that's why Tampa Bay Bucks won the championship. You don't hear anything about what the other 11 people did on defense or the other 10 people that were on offense. The quarterback gets the glory or gets the blame, when in fact there's 22 people playing the game that influence what happened. Anchor bias is another type of bias. What I mean by anchor bias, in other words, you go with one of the initial things that you're dealing with. Let me give you an example. Emergency room mistakes were analyzed between 2000 and 2009. And what they discovered was each year 100,000 lives were lost, primarily due to anchor bias. In other words, they went with the first symptoms that they had and stuck with it instead of exploring additional potential outcomes or symptoms to deal with that particular patient. Okay? Bottom line is, senior level is fundamentally different. It's demanding. It's exhilarating. It's rewarding. Every senior leader I've talked to loves the job. They love being at the top. And one of the things that you have to understand is that as you're going up, you're going to be an advisor to a senior leader before you become the senior leader. You need to know how they think. You need to know why they're focused on what they're doing, because if you're going to provide good advice or good counsel or do what they expect you to do, you need to know what is their expectations of themselves so that you can support them effectively.